When you think about how the world actually functions, like on a day-to-day basis, your mind probably goes straight to the tangible stuff.
Yeah, the physical things.
Right. You picture, I don't know, the concrete pillars holding up an overpass, or those massive container ships at a port, or the actual fiber optic cables running along the highway.
It's human nature, really. I mean, we want to see the steel. We want to see the physical structures that keep society moving, uh, mainly because it gives us a sense of control.
Totally. It's comforting. But if you look a little closer at the systems running your life right now, you start to realize something pretty unsettling.
Oh, definitely.
The most powerful forces holding our modern society together, like the ones dictating the economy, your security, even how you experience culture, they are completely invisible.
Yeah, they're the unseen scaffolding of the modern world. And the thing about invisible infrastructure is that, well, when it's humming along, you never even think about it.
No, never.
You just expect your data to load, your packages to arrive, and, your world to make sense. It's only when those systems are pushed to their absolute limits or when they fracture that you realize how entirely dependent on them you actually are.
Which brings us to our mission for you today.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are working through a massive stack of sources today, anchored by an incredibly dense, wide-ranging edition of the Morning Briefing, dated May 26, 2026.
Lots of ground to cover.
Yeah, we're going to cover everything from religious pilgrimages and corporate earnings to classroom policies and even deep-sea biology. But the core through line connecting all of this for you is exactly that, invisible infrastructure.
Right.
We're going to explore how these massive unseen systems quietly dictate the world and, well, what happens when they break down or have to be rebuilt. Okay, let's unpack this.
To set the stage here, reading through today's sources is it's like staring at the underlying source code of global society.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because we aren't just looking at isolated events anymore. We're looking at a hyper-connected environment where a single data point, say like a geopolitical dispute in one hemisphere, it instantly forces a massive logistical reroute in another.
Right, which then demands a surge in cloud computing power or something.
Exactly. Nothing happens in a vacuum anymore.
So let's start with physical logistics on a scale that honestly kind of defies logic. Like, how do you manage the movement of millions of people without a complete disaster?
It's one of the hardest things to do.
And right now, according to the sources, 2.5 million Muslims are gathered on the plains of Arafah for the day of Arafah during the Hajj pilgrimage. To put that in perspective for you, that is essentially the entire population of Chicago just standing in one place.
Yeah, all at once.
And the ambient temperature is 44 degrees Celsius. That's about 111 degrees Fahrenheit. From a purely physical standpoint, just keeping that many people hydrated and moving safely, it shouldn't even be possible.
And historically, it has been incredibly difficult. There have been tragedies. But Saudi authorities aren't relying on, physical barriers or static planning anymore. They've built an integrated web of invisible infrastructure.
Wow. Like what?
Well, we're talking about AI-driven crowd density sensors, real-time emergency routing algorithms, and even directional drone surveillance.
But how does that actually work on the ground? I mean, it's not like the AI is physically picking people up and moving the crowd.
No, but it's anticipating the physics of the crowd. What's fascinating here is that when you get that many people together, they stop acting like individuals and they start acting like fluid dynamics.
Oh, like water flowing through a pipe.
Exactly. So the AI is analyzing video feeds and cellular data in real time to calculate the density per square meter. It isn't just reacting to a bottleneck, it's predicting one that might happen, say, 15 minutes from now based on the current flow rates.
That's wild.
Yeah, and if a specific pathway starts showing restricted flow, the system automatically triggers digital signage and reroutes thousands of people down alternative corridors before the crush ever even happens.
What's incredible to me is that this 1.8 billion person religious observance has effectively become like the ultimate real-world stress test for crowd tech. The sources mention that planners for the Super Bowl, organizers for the Olympics, they're all studying the Hajj to understand how predictive machine learning can be used to engineer physical safety.
Because if the algorithm fails there, the consequences are immediate and catastrophic. It's high-stakes infrastructure.
Definitely. But then you have situations where the infrastructure is tested not by massive crowds, but by geopolitics.
Right, the World Cup situation.
Yeah, let's look at the 2026 World Cup. Just 6 weeks before kickoff, FIFA announces that Iran's national team has to completely abandon their base camp in Tucson, Arizona.
Which is a huge deal, so close to the tournament.
Massive. The U.S. government refused to let the squad stay overnight due to ongoing hostilities. And really quick, just to be clear for the listener, we are just reporting on the geopolitical facts. From the source material here, we're not taking any sides on U.S. or Iranian foreign policy.
Absolutely. Strictly looking at the logistical impact.
Right. So overnight, the team is forced to relocate across the border to Tijuana, Mexico.
And this required massive, immediate logistical rewiring. I mean, the Mexican government stepped in, and now Iran Air is running direct charter flights into Tijuana, keeping the team just a 55-minute flight from their match venues up in L.A.
So wait, here is where I look at this and think about the broader implications.
Yeah.
If I'm an executive at a multinational company or even just someone managing a regional supply chain, and I see an entire national sports team effectively evicted from a country in a matter of days, doesn't that freak out multinational corporations?
Oh, completely.
It's like finding out your landlord can just evict your entire business overnight without any warning.
You've hit on the exact anxiety rippling through the corporate world right now. Organizations of all sizes are looking at this as a very loud warning bell.
I bet.
You can have the best logistics, the most optimized supply chain, and a perfectly negotiated real estate deal, but geopolitics can literally rewrite the physical map overnight.
Yeah.
The trend now is extreme geographic redundancy. Companies are realizing they need a backup plan for their backup plan, housed in an entirely different political jurisdiction just to guarantee operational survival.
That need for redundancy really highlights how fragile some of our physical systems are. And yet, when you look at how we celebrate national identity, we are like deliberately shifting away from physical spaces and toward digital scaffolding.
Oh, you mean the America 250 events?
Yeah, take the upcoming America 250 celebrations, July 4, 2026. The 250th anniversary of the U.S.
The logistics of the celebration are monumental, particularly as it arrives during a very complex time for the country.
Right, and you have the physical events, sure.
Yeah.
There's the America Innovates Tech Expo that's touring all 50 states. There's an international fleet review in New York Harbor with 60 ships from 30 countries. They've got those dual-dated 1776 to 2026 coins.
Yeah.
And the big Smithsonian exhibition.
Yeah, lots of physical touch points.
But the actual connective tissue of the event is entirely digital.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture of civic infrastructure, it's a fascinating evolution. Like,
Yeah.
250 years ago, shared national consciousness relied on physical printed paper and, town criers.
Right, literally yelling in a square.
Exactly. But today, the America 250 Commission is coordinating synchronized events designed to reach 350 million people simultaneously.
Wow.
They're doing this through geo-targeted push notifications and interactive live streams. The infrastructure of our shared civic memory doesn't exist in a town square anymore. It exists on server racks.
Which brings us perfectly to the engine running all of this. Because the AI managing those crowds at the Hajj, the predictive supply chains we talked about, the tech powering a synchronized national celebration, none of it is magic.
Far from it.
People say the cloud, and it's honestly a terrible metaphor because it implies this weightless, ethereal thing.
Okay, just floating up there.
Yeah, but in reality, the cloud is heavy, it's hot, and it is unimaginably expensive.
The physical backbone required to build what we might call the global digital brain is just staggering. And the companies pouring the concrete for that brain, they are seeing returns that are hard to even comprehend.
Okay, let's talk Nvidia. They just dropped their Q1 revenue numbers,
Yeah.
$81.6 billion.
Unbelievable.
And that's not for the year, that's for the quarter. That's a 69% increase year over year, and they expect to hit $91 billion in Q2. But, I mean, I don't want to just throw huge numbers around. Why are these chips so valuable to everyone right now?
Well, it really comes down to architecture, specifically their Blackwell GPUs. When you are training a large language model, you aren't just doing sequential math like a normal laptop computer.
Right.
You have to process millions of calculations simultaneously. So NVIDIA's chips are uniquely designed for this massive parallel processing.
Okay, that makes sense.
And their CEO, Jensen Huang, recently noted that demand continues to far outpace their supply. Every major tech company on Earth is essentially standing in line waiting for these chips, which is forcing NVIDIA into this hyper-expansion with TSMC and U.S. domestic fabricators.
And because that computing power is at such a premium, we're seeing major financial maneuvers just to control access to it. The briefing mentions a new $5 billion joint venture between Blackstone and Google.
Yeah, this is a big deal.
They are teaming up to build an enterprise AI computing company powered by Google's tensor processing units, or TPUs. They're aiming to bring 500 megawatts of data center capacity online by 2027, led by Benjamin Traynor Sloss.
Which is wild.
Yeah, 500 megawatts. That is enough power to run a medium-sized city dedicated entirely to data processing.
And what's crucial to understand here is the business model. This isn't for you or me or even like a typical small business to use. This is being built outside the standard Google Cloud platform.
So wait, essentially, shared cloud spaces are getting too crowded, and these massive enterprises are basically paying Blackstone and Google to build them a private high-speed toll road just for their AI data.
Precisely. We are entering the era of bespoke AI infrastructure.
Bespoke infrastructure, wow.
Yeah. If you are a massive bank or a global healthcare provider, you cannot afford latency. You cannot afford your AI model slowing down because someone else on the public server is running a massive data pool. You demand dedicated, isolated performance, and you are willing to pay billions to secure that private toll road.
But the big question has always been, when does this actually translate to software profits? Because for years, companies have been burning billions of dollars just to train these models.
Right. The cash burn has been historic.
But Anthropic just projected its first ever quarterly operating profit. They expect to make $559 million on $10.9 billion in Q2 revenue. And their coding tool, Claude Code, it hit $1 billion in annualized revenue in just 6 months.
Which is a fundamental shift in the whole AI narrative. Showing an operating profit proves to the market that AI can actually be a sustainable utility, not just a giant research project.
Yeah, a real business.
Exactly. And with Anthropic planning a public listing later in 2026, they really needed to show investors a clean, profitable machine, not a cash incinerator.
And they're backing that up with major talent acquisitions, too. Andrej Karpathy just joined Anthropic's pre-training team.
Oh, that was massive news.
Yeah, for those who don't know the name, Karpathy is an absolute giant in this field. He co-founded OpenAI, he led Tesla's autopilot vision team, and he is famous for these incredibly clear, deep-dive educational videos on YouTube about neural networks.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, his move is a massive signaling mechanism to the entire AI research community. Karpathy had his pick of the litter.
Oh, for sure.
He could have gone to Meta, Google DeepMind, or back to OpenAI. Choosing Anthropic serves as a huge validation of their specific technical approach, particularly constitutional AI.
Right, and we should probably explain what that means because it's a big deal in this space.
Yeah, go ahead.
So instead of having thousands of human workers manually correct the AI every time it gives a bad answer, which is what most companies do, constitutional AI basically gives the model a list of core principles, like a constitution.
Right.
The AI then trains itself to evaluate its own outputs against those rules. It's essentially automating the guardrail.
Exactly. The center of gravity for AI research is highly contested right now. By choosing the company focused on self-regulating infrastructure, Karpathy is tipping the scales towards safety-first development.
Which is the perfect pivot, honestly, because right now, deciding the rules for this invisible infrastructure is sparking massive fights, especially when it comes to classrooms and kids.
Oh, yeah. The policy debates are getting intense.
New York City, which is the largest school district in the country with 1.1 million students, they just dropped the hammer. They outright banned the use of AI for making any decisions regarding student grades, disciplinary actions, and individualized education programs, or IEPs.
And they are citing significant equity concerns for doing that.
And again, for the listener, we're just outlining the policy and the sources here, not taking a political stance on education policy.
Right. Just looking at what the district decided, their argument is that these AI models are often trained on non-representative data, which introduces algorithmic bias.
Yeah, which is a real concern.
Definitely. If you use AI to grade essays or recommend disciplinary action, you risk automating discrimination without any clear way to audit the machine's reasoning. So they've adopted a traffic light framework, red, yellow, green, to categorize acceptable AI use.
I understand the fear of bias, absolutely.
Yeah.
But let me push back on this ban for a second. If you completely outlaw the tool in an administrative capacity, aren't you just sort of burying your head in the sand? The source mentions schools might get priced out of enterprise-grade AI soon.
It's true.
So these kids are going to grow up and enter a workforce entirely dominated by the bespoke AI systems we just talked about. If a school just slaps a red light on it using this playbook, aren't they missing the boat? Aren't they missing an opportunity to teach students how to navigate flawed infrastructure?
That's a vital debate, but New York City is trying to draw a very specific line between a tool and a judge.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, They are fine with the teacher using AI as a productivity tool, like to generate a lesson plan, but they refuse to let the AI act as a decision maker for a high-stakes outcome that permanently impacts a student's life.
Ah, okay, I see the distinction.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, though, up in Boston, a coalition involving the Superintendents Association, ASA Day of AI, and MIT Raise is taking a totally different approach.
Yeah, this is a really interesting contrast.
They're hosting a summit in July to draft a national model AI policy. But the people actually writing the draft, it's the students, not policymakers.
This raises an important question about regulatory vacuums. Right now, only 13% of teachers say their district has a clear AI policy, despite there being 68 different state bills currently pending.
That's a huge disconnect.
It is. Having students physically write the governance models they will live under is an incredible way to build civic infrastructure from the ground up, rather than just imposing rules from the top down.
And they are actually tying it right into the America 250 anniversary with programs like the America's Field Trip contests, using the milestone as a civic education moment.
Which is a great way to use the anniversary.
But, you know, as much as we try to build these positive guardrails, the reality is that the digital infrastructure we rely on is constantly under attack.
Always.
Let's talk cybersecurity.
It is the dark underbelly of literally everything we've discussed today.
Yeah. The sources outline a critical vulnerability in the Ghost CMS platform. The designation is CVE 2026-26980, and it allowed attackers to hijack over 700 major websites. We're talking places like Harvard, Oxford, and DuckDuckGo.
What's insidious here is the actual method they used. Attackers exploited a flaw to extract administrative API keys, which basically gave them total control over the sites.
Right.
Then they deployed what's known as a click-fix social engineering attack.
Right, and this is where it gets highly psychological. A click-fix attack doesn't just hack your computer quietly in the background. You visit a trusted site, like Harvard's homepage, and a pop-up appears that looks exactly like a legitimate browser error.
It looks totally normal.
Yeah, it tells you there's a display issue and instructs you to copy and paste a string of text into your computer's terminal to fix it.
And the moment a user does that, they are executing malicious code themselves. They are essentially handing over control of their machine. It bypasses technical security entirely by relying on social engineering.
It's so manipulative.
It really is. And you know the most frustrating part for cybersecurity teams?
What's that?
A software patch for this specific vulnerability patch, 6.19.1. It had been available since February.
Oh, man. So hundreds of organizations just failed to apply it.
Exactly. It goes back to your point about maintenance. You can build the most advanced infrastructure in the world, but if you don't do the digital upkeep, it crumbles.
Right. And we saw a similar urgency with Microsoft's recent patch Tuesday. The briefing says they patched 120 flaws. The good news is there were no active 0 days being exploited.
Always a relief.
Yeah, but they did find a critical 9.8 CVSS domain controller remote code execution flaw in NetLogon. That's CVE 2026-410889, and it requires immediate attention.
Because if an attacker exploits that NetLogon flaw, they can theoretically take over an entire corporate domain. It is a constant race to patch the concrete before the bridge collapses.
But occasionally, law enforcement decides to stop patching holes and just demolish the attacker's bridge instead.
Yeah.
The Europol and FBI takedown of First VPN, which they dubbed Operation Saffron, is a perfect example of this.
It really is. First VPN was an anonymization service. It was the digital infrastructure being used by at least 25 different ransomware groups, including major syndicates like Avadon, to hide their communications and their command and control traffic.
So instead of playing a global game of whack-a-mole with individual hackers, law enforcement just went after the infrastructure. It's like, instead of trying to arrest the bank robbers, they seized the company that makes the getaway cars. Right.
That is exactly the shift in strategy. They seized 33 servers and arrested a key administrator. But the real devastating blow was exposing the user database.
Oh, I bet they panicked.
Oh, yeah. They exposed 5,000 criminal accounts of people who fully believed their infrastructure was impenetrable. By taking out the shared infrastructure, law enforcement crippled the ecosystem at scale.
Okay, so we've covered the massive systemic updates today. We've talked about billions in AI scaling, geopolitical maneuvering, cyber warfare. But what I really appreciate about this collection of sources is that beneath all these sweeping, heavy systems, human life, resilience, and discovery just keep pushing forward in surprising ways.
Because ultimately, infrastructure only matters in how it impacts the human experience.
Right, and that impact can be incredibly sobering. In Iran, The sources note that the internet was just restored after an 87-day government-imposed blackout.
You really have to pause and process the human toll of that. For nearly 3 months, students, businesses, and journalists were completely cut off from the global nervous system.
And again, strictly reporting the facts of the blackout here, but it's a stark reminder that the very infrastructure that connects us can be weaponized to silence a population.
And the reality is, the government still retains that infrastructure. They can plunge the nation back into digital darkness at any moment.
It is a profound vulnerability. But, on the flip side, we also see how this digital scaffolding processes human joy and culture.
Yeah, some levity.
Exactly. The New York Knicks just swept the Cleveland Cavaliers to reach the NBA Finals for the first time in 27 years.
Madison Square Garden is losing its mind.
Literally
Yeah.
losing it. Jalen Brunson got MVP. They're on an 11-game win streak with a record plus 262-point differential. It's historic.
And alongside that massive sports moment, you have a totally different kind of cultural phenomenon happening online.
The Justin Bieber trend, right?
Yeah, his Everything Hallelujah TikTok trend. People are making these incredibly wholesome lists of things they love, like coffee, the smell of rain, old books. Even the White House joined in on it.
At first glance, a basketball game and a Justin Bieber trend have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
Or with infrastructure.
Right.
But think about the invisible systems required to make a Madison Square Garden victory a global communal event, or to take a single song and turn it into a universal format for human connection.
This raises an important question regarding how humans process information overload. In a world dominated by AI infrastructure and geopolitical stress, people are instinctively gravitating toward microjoys and shared communal experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
We use these massive networks to seek out that connection, whether it's a historic basketball win or a wholesome social media trend. It's how we cope.
I love looking at it that way, and I want to save the best for last today. A story about discovery in a place where our digital infrastructure simply does not exist.
The deep ocean.
Yeah. Researchers aboard the exploration vessel Nautilus just discovered a brand new species of tiny, brilliant blue octopus. The scientific name is Microilodon galapagensis, and they found it 6,000 feet beneath the Galapagos Islands.
And the significance here is actually how they studied it. It was studied entirely through CT scanning without any dissection.
It's amazing.
Yeah, its internal organs are so unique that scientists actually had to revise the criteria for the entire Megalelodonidae family.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've traveled from 2.5 million pilgrims navigated by AI to the boardrooms of Nvidia and Blackstone funding that AI. We've looked at the students writing the rules for it, hackers trying to exploit it, all the way down to a tiny blue octopus in the dark ocean.
It's a lot to take in.
It is,
Hmm.
but it means our world is driven by overlapping invisible infrastructures.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder that builds on all this source material. Today we talked about the billions being spent to build AI servers and the incredible new technologies scanning the deep ocean.
Right.
But consider this. As we rush to map the digital frontier and extract every ounce of efficiency from our data, there are still creatures like that blue octopus living 6,000 feet deep in complete darkness, utterly untouched by our networks.
Wow. Yeah.
It makes you wonder, as we build systems to track and predict absolutely everything on the surface, what other quiet, brilliant things are thriving right now simply because they remain totally disconnected from our infrastructure?
That is an incredible thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive into the invisible threads tying our world together. Stay curious, and we'll catch you next time.